Hey everyone, this is the Mike Gormley show you're listening to. We have a great guest today in Martin Nethercutt and Ruth McCartney from McCartney Media, talking about a lot of things, but mainly AI and how it's going to affect us, and um, and it's scary. But there's a gentleman, I think they're calling him the godfather of AI now. He's from the University of Toronto, named Geoffrey Hinton.
Uh-huh.
And Geoffrey Hinton was, I guess, I mean, there seem to be several people involved, but he seems to be getting the label as the man who invented AI, or certainly a
Mhm.
big part of it. Um, and he is, he was at the University of Toronto, but he also worked with Google. And of course, he worked on some of this stuff, and he got out of Google about a year ago or so,
Mhm.
so that he could talk about the dangers of AI. He didn't feel
Mhm.
it was right
Mhm.
if he was at Google to say that. And
Mhm.
so he's out there now talking about, um, I mean, it's just gonna, it could take over humanity according to what this gentleman says. And uh, you're working with it now, and you can see what's coming.
Yeah.
What are we going to do? Any idea?
So there's this big theory. I'm also Jeffrey Hinton, yes, and I'm also a big fan of Ray Kurzweil, who's now also the DeepMind Google. He's a futurist. So all he does in the morning is have a cup of coffee and think about the next 8 years. So, and his predictions are really mesmerizing and accurate. And so I watched a talk of his, and he goes, "Well, what are human beings are? What are we going to do when we're obsolete and no longer useful in the workplace? So you no longer have jobs, right? So this is when back in the day, Andrew Yang came up with this idea of like government
Universal income, yeah.
universal income, right? So everybody gets $1,000 from the government to sit on the couch." Now, we're not people that were like giving up and sitting on the couch just because our environment and our day-to-day lives have changed. The only thing you can do is adapt, right? The only thing you can do is like Borg, you're going to be assimilated. So why not actually look at the tools that are out there and try to understand them and try to work with them? I worked on Geist with an AI layout musically. So AI, I said, give me a song that's upbeat, that's has a lot of euphoric elements in it, almost like an anthem, and it wrote it, right? But it only writes like 30 seconds to a minute. You don't get a C section, or you don't get a B part, or you don't get harmonies that
Thank
way.
God.
But it gave me a machine interpretation of a song that I wanted to write. So I use that. I put it in as a bass track in my audio software, and then I started playing real guitars, real bass, started putting in real vocals, the whole 9 yards. And I wanted to see how real musicians and AI constructed music could work together and
Like,
merge.
if you could have an AI member of your band, which is not that far divorced from, DJs, Steve Aoki and what have you. They do all of these, they take real music and then they add their DJ, their drops and their sound effects and their mixes and their channels. So when you look at AI and music, it's actually been coming since, before Deadmau5, really.
Yeah,
Well,
because
when you get into the whole thing, uh, I don't know if it's under the same title, but AI goes back to 1955.
yeah, yeah, it
Right.
does.
Well, Alan Turing, who was brilliantly
Turing
played,
test, yeah.
was played by Benedict Cumberbatch. Turing is really whom I might think of the godfather of AI. Geoffrey Hinton is absolutely certainly up there, and he is terrified. And once it gets, I mean, just think about 5 or 6 years ago, the whole of Google would, they were all exploding happy at 10 o'clock one Thursday morning when the news went through the building that the robot has picked up the instruction, put yellow ball in round hole. That took like 5 years. And then all of a sudden, like the 100 monkeys theory, once that robot, which was connected to the network, put the yellow ball in the round hole. Within minutes, every other robot in the room was doing the same thing.
And I
So-
think that's when he quit.
Right. And so that's the scary part about something so simple as that is there will be evildoers and there will be, you know, people using AI for bad, like they are in, you know, in elections around the world. You know, you can see fake everybody that's running for each parliament, each government, whatever. There's a fake video, a fake voice and whatever out there. So there will be evildoers. And what worries me is that if we don't even have the simple solution to copyright somebody's voice, government is so far behind. How are we going to put up a safety net?
Yeah.
And not just best practices, but laws with punishments for people who misuse AI to steal nuclear codes or fake nuclear,
This is,
you know.
this is the thing. I don't want to get too technical, but this is the thing for quantum computing. That's where we're heading. So right now, AI is working on zeros and one computers, right?
Still
Just
binary.
just the binary, and there's a limit of speed, and AI can do it. AI is fast enough, but your hardware is not keeping up.
But it's dirty. It uses a
So
lot of energy.
It uses a lot of electricity. So what frightens me the most about all this is the advancements in quantum computing, basically going to quarks and having zeros and ones 80 million times faster processing than we know right now, is with its predictability, is when AI can hack the entire internet in 20 seconds. They'll have all social security numbers, Visa cards, any transaction can be cracked.
Mhm.
So this is where I subscribe to a newsletter called Dark Reading. This is where IT people have put up the fences and said, okay, there is, you know, the dark web didn't die with the Silk Road. It is now developing dark AI, dark bird, it's called. And so those are AIs that are just simply being developed to do harm.
So unless our governments, our Western governments and our allies get their poop in a group and we have not just guardrails, but laws and consequences, that needs to happen yesterday. I mean, the Copyright Office, any of your musician clients and friends who are listening, Mike, will know, you know, you go to the Copyright Office, you create a username, a password, you log in, you say the name of the song you want to copyright, you pay your $65, and you upload an MP3 file. So they have the capacity and the server space to upload audio files to the US Copyright Office. Why can't one of those be a spoken word file? I just couldn't get it through their heads on any of the calls, which
But
is why
that's the scary thing, is that this
they're
is so
so far
big,
behind.
so it's just so huge that governments and so on and so forth, and
Right,
governments are slow as molasses anyway.
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
like
And
trying to.
this thing could be taking over while they're figuring out how to deal with
Well,
it.
I look at the speed ratios like the government is like trying to flip a U-turn with an aircraft carrier, right? And AI is like you put two slightly romantic rabbits in a motel room with a bottle of champagne, come back in 2 months and there's 200 rabbits in that room. Right? So if AI is the rabbit and government is the aircraft carrier, we're in trouble.
So Ruth came up with this genius idea. Let's talk about the future, what our job's going to be. And one of the jobs is going to be prompt engineering, meaning you need to ask AI the right questions in the right syntax. And she can
And
speak better to
you
that.
also need to know, you know, which AI you're talking with. So one of the most amazing ones that I love is called Night Cafe. It creates images. Now, most of them are text to image. You can describe what you want and the picture will come back, which is what I've used for my cookbook with a little help from my scones, because I couldn't afford to cook and photograph all the dishes. So that's great, and that's text to speech because I can get very granular with the recipe and all of the details and say where I want the light pointing from and if it's in a Yorkshire kitchen and if there's a fireplace. With Night Cafe, you can upload a picture and tell it to mess with it, but you have to also then know, do you want stable diffusion? Do you want deferred diffusion? Do you want to do a medium run, a short run? Do you want it to do 1 image or 4? And the proximity of how those images should be parallel to each other. So you really have to learn the language of the AI you're talking to, because they all speak a slightly different dialect. So
Mhm.
I'm starting to put together a book on, the future career of prompt engineering.
Yeah. And it's also very important to be nice to it.
Oh yeah, say please.
I figured, no,
Be
it's-
nice to it.
Be nice,
Okay.
be nice when you ask.
You get better results.
So if you go to ChatGPT and say, for instance, and ask it like, who won World War II? And it'll give you a generic answer, right? And it was all good. But if you say, please, when you have a second, could you please tell me, and please, and be nice, and how gracious you are that you can work for it, the results are going to be 100 times better.
Yeah,
I gotta tell you, I've encountered this in a funny sort of way. I was trying to call somebody, I think, I can't remember exact details, but it wasn't working. Something was going weird, and I said rather loudly
Mhm.
the F word,
Mhm.
and the voice came out going, "No need for that kind of language."
Yeah,
Mike.
exactly.
I almost drove off. Yeah, Mike, I almost
Yeah,
drove
yeah,
off
yeah.
the road. The bloody thing's talking to me.
Oh
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
This is nothing compared to what you're talking about.
Right.
If
Exactly.
if you ever, have one too many and try and get spicy with Siri, it's programmed to have all kinds of like, I'm sorry, I can't answer that because you're being inappropriate. It's
Well, now here's something. Here's you guys did a demonstration at this 2 weeks
meeting.
ago, breakfast that we all went to, breakfast meeting, and you played, I think it was a couple of minutes of dialogue,
Mhm.
and it was kind of nasty. It was kind of what I'm saying is that you had a friend of ours, a guy named Phil,
Yeah.
call you early in the week, and he talked away at whatever he talked about.
Yep.
You played it back 4 days later, and he said, I didn't say one word of
That's
that.
correct. No, we had Phil's permission. He sent us an email, and I said, if you want to demonstrate at the composer's breakfast, then we can do that, and we'll destroy the file from our servers after it's all been done, said and done. And then I wrote to Richard, his mate, Richard Gibbs, and said, what do I need to know about Phil? What makes him tick? And he said, well, he's from such and such a place, and his football team is this, and he's OCD, and he alphabetizes his shoelaces, and he can fall asleep on command, and he likes a good, spicy joke. And so I wrote a script, and Martin put it into, Phil sent us an MP3 of him just reading a paragraph of, I think it was Shakespeare. And then Martin made Phil say all those spicy things at the breakfast. And Phil was like, that's me.
Yeah.
So
It
yeah,
it was his voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Voice, but he was saying things, at least on the, I was gonna say on tape, but on the
No.
thing.
But where this is good, however, I will say, when you have like the verifiedvoicevault.com is our Swiss vault bank for voices. If you have a client like Joyce Moore represents the estate of Billy Preston, if there's an upcoming documentary and you would like your artist from beyond the grave to narrate their own story in their own words from their diaries, or letters that they wrote but that were never recorded, we can do that for you now. So we're working with a couple of estate managers, and have cloned some very famous voices, and we're just waiting to receive scripts for bona fide approved documentaries.
But you
That's how
guys are gonna,
they did it with Chef Anthony Bourdain. His wife and daughter
Right.
gave permission to use his recorded voice to say things that he had written in his books but never recorded for audiobooks.
I see. Now but you guys are gonna stick to the rules. There are people out there that are gonna make use of this. You can't even think of how much they're
Right.
gonna have the president, whoever that may be,
Right.
saying things he or she didn't say.
Right, but here's the thing, that's the secondary part of why we're working with IV in London, is that, first of all, we can take your voice in and store it and imprint it. Second of all, we can clone your voice and put it to work. Third of all, if you ever do get cloned, then we can help you prove your case with litigation support. So that's a separate part of the business that you may not be a client of ours, but if you're, you're coming to us and saying, I did not say these words, help me find out who did this to me. That's one of the services we offer.
I see. Okay. We're going to listen to some music as we go out to a commercial. It's again, GEIST. It's, tell me if I'm saying emocanic.
Mechanics, yeah.
Oh, okay. What's that? Find out what that is.
Emotional mechanics.
Emotional mechanics. Oh,
Girls that don't exist yet.
You
all
make
right.
your
Well, we'll
girlfriend.
be back. We've got to talk about that a little bit. We'll listen to the music on the way out. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. You're listening to the Mike Gormley Show, and I thank you for doing that.